Are you looking to lower the dose or come off of your sleep medication, but you're concerned about rebound insomnia? Or have you experienced that when you do lower the dose, you find yourself having a lot of struggles with sleep? If you said yes to any of the above, then this class is for you. In this episode, we're going to understand the difference between rebound sleep disruption and rebound insomnia, and how to meet the concerns that you have had or the experiences that you have had. And when you understand and see how to move forward, you will find more peace of mind and peaceful sleep. And this is why we will look at all of the above. Let's get into it. Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Insomnia Insight, in which we are going to look at rebound insomnia. I'm actually surprised that we don't have an episode dedicated to this topic. Recently, we had questions about this in the comment section, which prompted me to do this now. And by the way, if you thought the intro to this episode was a little fuzzy and not quite clear, then guess what? I did it like 5 times, which is typically it's pretty easy. I just do an intro and I'm happy with it. And this one I did it so many times, so I was just like, okay, that intro has to do. Anyways, let's get on with this episode. We're going to divide this class into a couple of sections. One is rebound activity, rebound disruption, then rebound insomnia, and what to do. And by the way, if you're thinking, I'm just going to skip to number 3 and 4, it will make a whole lot more sense to you if you just go, just sit through this. And it's going to be like 10, 15 minutes, something in total. So just follow through and everything will make it so much more sense if you do. So with that said, let's go to the first topic of rebound activity. And the first question I have for you, or it's kind of a rhetorical question, but anyways, you can think about this. What do all medications that are prescribed for insomnia or used for insomnia have in common? And when I say medication, I mean prescription medication, but also like over-the-counter medication like your Benadryl or ZQuil or these type of medication. What do they all have in common? It may appear to us as if they have these very different mechanisms of action and that they're tailored for different types of sleep problems. But in reality, they just have one thing in common. They all produce this one thing, and that is simply sedation. Whether it is benzodiazepine or an antipsychotic like Seroquel, or it's a sedating antidepressant or an antihistamine, what they all have in common is that they sedate. In other words, they suppress activity in the central nervous system. We can think of it as suppressing the nervous system activity below its set point. So, there's always a certain amount of activity like in our nervous system, right? And when we sedate it, we can think of it as kind of like we're pushing it down below its set point. And I'm not saying this is like good or bad, there may be instances where that's exactly what we want to do, but this leads to kind of a nice analogy, which is that we can see that we can suppress a balloon underwater, but it wants to go to its set point, right? When we release the suppression, that balloon will like surge up and it will like sit on the water. That's where it naturally is, right? Without suppression, that's where it is. And this is just like this analogy, this language I'm using is just to illustrate how removing sedation from a nervous system that has been suppressed naturally leads to a surge in activity. There will be either a surge as in like a resumption of the set point activity, if you will, or this kind of like overcompensation, like the nervous system has been suppressed and it's started to kind of compensate for that, and without the suppression it's kind of overcompensating. This kind of like a surge to like above the set point and then eventually down to the set point. But either way, we can see that when we remove suppression from the nervous system, it is quite expected that we have a rise in activity in said nervous system. And now I checked this with our AI overlords. I tried ChatGPT, it didn't work for me for some reason, so I did like Gemini, and it confirmed that my analogy is true, and this very much happens. And if you want to learn more about the biomechanical, reasons this happens, then feel free to dive deeper into this. But for our purposes, all we want to understand is that when we remove suppression, it's natural that we have more activity in a nervous system like our brain. In other words, it is not surprising that coming off, whether it is completely coming off some medication or just lowering the dose, leads to a rebound activity, including sleeping pills, because they are sedating. So we can have rebound activity, which leads to our second point here about rebound wakefulness. So again, we've said that removing suppression, it leads to rebound activity. And one way that we can experience this rebounding activity is in the form of wakefulness, being more awake. We may call this agitation or irritability, alertness, but this all really just describes a nervous system that is more active than it was before, more active. We can also see that jerkiness or jitteriness, other things are not going to be surprising when we remove sedation, all just signs of rebound activity. One of those signs, again, is wakefulness. And by the way, what we're talking about now is sometimes described as withdrawal, as in when we have been drinking a lot of alcohol for quite a while and we stop that, we can have withdrawal, or coming off benzodiazepines that we've taken for quite a long time, we can have withdrawal. But surely this is not all of it. We can also have a short-term sedation of the nervous system, as in like we had a couple of beers one night and we fell asleep, and then the alcohol is consumed or metabolized by our body. Then we can also have this like resumption of nervous system activity that is not withdrawal. But anyway, withdrawal is one way, is one example of what we talked about now. So what we see clearly now is that rebound wakefulness is definitely a thought-independent consequence of reducing sedation, and it is self-limiting. Meaning, if we have been taking a sleeping pill for some time, or even just briefly, then when we stop doing that, it is not surprising that we are more awake. It takes us longer to fall asleep. We have more choppy sleep. We wake up more often. We're awake longer, right? This can all be explained by rebound wakefulness, which is one of the experiences, one of the ways we can experience rebound activity in a nervous system. And I use the word thought independent because we can have this experience regardless of how we think about the fact that we're coming off a sleeping pill. Going back to the alcohol analogy, somebody who has been, binging on alcohol and quickly stops is likely going to have withdrawal symptoms, regardless of how they think about the fact that they were drinking a lot of alcohol and stopped, right? So first point here is that rebound wakefulness is clearly a possibility of coming off sleeping pills. However, as I pointed out here, this rebound wakefulness is self-limiting, which means that when our nervous system habituates to the new dose, whether it's 0 or a lower dosage, the withdrawal symptoms fade away. And a natural question here becomes like, how soon does that happen? And I'm not an expert in this field at all. You can Google this or search for this or or whatnot. But I would say that habituation to a lower dosage at the kind of like synaptic level, nervous system level, I think is a process that takes that is measured in days. Not months, not many weeks, but like in days. That's my belief anyway. And it actually doesn't really matter, and we'll see why in a second. But that's how I think about it. And so again, it's self-limiting because like when the nervous system habituates, the withdrawal symptoms fade. And also a key point here is that rebound wakefulness is not self-perpetuating. It's not self-perpetuating and it's self-limiting, which is very different from anything that we label insomnia, including rebound insomnia. And here we are, point number 3, rebound insomnia. We're going to start here under this topic of rebound insomnia with just looking at our definition of insomnia. What is insomnia? Well, insomnia is a self-perpetuating struggle rooted in mislabeling wakefulness as a threat. In other words, being awake, whether it's during the day or at night, is in itself harmless. However, our brain is designed to keep us safe, so it has the ability to label something that is not harmful as a threat, including wakefulness. You can go like, oh no, I'm not sleeping. This shouldn't be happening. Why am I awake? Etc. etc. And this is a couple of ways, sentences that we may hear when our brain has mislabeled wakefulness at night as a threat. And when wakefulness is labeled as a threat, then when we find ourselves awake for any reason, our brain goes like, oh no, this shouldn't be happening. What's wrong? And it puts itself in this hyper alert state where we find ourselves more awake. And then we think even more that we're under threat. And then we are even more awake. And you can see that this is now a loop. This is a loop that is self-perpetuating. And this is rebound insomnia. Rebound insomnia is when wakefulness has become labeled as a threat after we came off some sleeping medication, and it is self-perpetuating. So the key thing here is that rebound wakefulness, which can very well happen, and it's just a physiological effect of removing sedation, is not the same as rebound insomnia. Rebound insomnia is really similar to any other type of insomnia. It's a struggle that comes from how we think about the fact that we were awake or that we didn't sleep. So if we reduce sleeping pills, we can experience rebound insomnia, rebound wakefulness. And if this appears as a threat to us, if we reduce the sleeping pills and we find that we have more choppy sleep and we now think, oh no, this shouldn't be happening. Why am I awake? What's wrong? Now we can have insomnia because again, our brain is thinking of not sleeping as a threat. And now we can call this rebound insomnia, what I just described. We're coming off a sleeping pill, we're more awake, we start thinking this is a threat, and now we have insomnia. But we don't need to. We can just call it insomnia as well, because in reality, all insomnia is the same. All insomnia comes from the mislabeling of wakefulness as a threat, regardless of how that wakefulness happened in the first place. So the point here, insomnia, whether we call it rebound insomnia or just insomnia in general, insomnia does not come from lowering sleeping pill dosages, only from thinking of wakefulness as a threat. And I hope this point made a lot of sense to you, because it's one of those points where you go like, okay, I get it. I can't get insomnia from coming off my sleeping pill or lowering my dosages. That can lead to a huge amount of relief and understanding, which is so helpful. So now, the title of this video is what to do when lowering the dose keeps you awake. Well, here is what to do. It's really, as always, not about doing something in terms of like taking any particular action. It's more about doing as in learning and educating yourself, which leads to understanding. And you've already done that. Like you're here, you're doing what really helps. And now you understand the difference between sleep disruption and insomnia. And you see that, yes, my sleep can become disrupted when I change the dosages of medication, but that in self does not lead to insomnia. Insomnia is always about how we think about things. And you now also understand that fear of rebound insomnia, by the way, is a fear of fear, because insomnia is just a consequence of our brain sensing that we are in a threatening situation, right? And if we're like thinking about like, what if I get insomnia? Then we are sensing a threat in sensing a threat, right? Another way to explain it is a little less accurate according to like our philosophy, but much more easy to understand is like it's a fear of fear. When insomnia is really, we can think of it as like a state of fear. We're afraid of not sleeping. And if we're afraid of having insomnia, if we're afraid of having rebound insomnia, or afraid of having insomnia in any shape or form, we're really just afraid of being afraid. And when we see this, it can be so helpful. We can see that, oh, there's actually no real threat. There's no danger. This is all just constructs in my mind. That can be really, really helpful. And also, what helps here is that seeing that this principle understanding applies to all withdrawal symptoms, regardless of time frame. So I wrote this down because I anticipate that someone who hears this is going to say withdrawal from benzodiazepines is different. You have to be really, really careful when you come down off these medications, and the withdrawal symptoms can pop up like months later, months after. And of course, I maybe should have said this earlier, but nothing here is medical advice. Anyone who's thinking of lowering their dose or coming off their sleeping pills, of course, talk to your doctor or your prescriber. But what I want to point out there is that the principal understanding that we talked about here applies regardless of the time frame of withdrawal symptoms or the intensity of withdrawal symptoms. And that principal understanding is that withdrawal symptoms are in many circumstances just a fact of life. They're uncomfortable sensations in our body that we're going to have. But often the real struggle is when we think of them as a threat. When withdrawal symptoms, whatever they are thought of as a threat, because now we have this additional struggle of like, oh no, how can I avoid this? Why is this happening? The fear of them, if you will, it leads to much more struggle than those withdrawal symptoms in themselves would have produced, including wakefulness as one, let's call it a withdrawal symptom, right? So even if how should I put this? The question of how much withdrawal symptoms we have from coming off benzodiazepines in particular, and how long they can last, is one that I don't know. It's sometimes it's notable that one person can come off these medications like in one day and have no symptoms whatsoever. Another person kind of tapers them over a long, long time and is very, very symptomatic. And to what degree that is just evidence that we're all kind of like our wiring is different, we're hardwired different, or to what degree that means like it's how we think about things that matters, I don't know. But again, I don't think it matters, because when we just see that, yes, there are such things as withdrawal symptoms, which are thought independent, but how we think of things is what really truly matters, then things get easier for us, because we avoid all the suffering, although we may have some pain, right? And finally, what to do is just seeing that, understanding all the above, understanding ourselves, the human mind, what we go through, seeing that we're not alone. This really leads to where we all want to be, a place of peaceful sleep, and peace of mind. All right, let's conclude there. Hope this brought a lot of value your way. And as always, any comments, questions, put them in the comment section, and I look forward to seeing you real soon again. Bye for now.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope you found the video you just saw full of inspirational content and full of educational content as well, because that's really what we try to do here in the school. We try to educate and inspire. And if you're finding that things are clicking for you and sleep is happening easier and you're leaving the struggle, please let us know in the comment section, because we live for that. We live for hearing how somebody is finding sleep and life becoming lighter and easier. And not only are you doing us a huge favor as sleep coaches and like filling our tank with that gas that makes us never want to stop doing this, but you're also helping the community. You're helping by inspiring other people, and by commenting, you're telling YouTube that this was interesting, and YouTube feeds our content to more people so that they can discover our teachings and things get easier for them. So again, if you found things getting easier for you, please let us know in the comment section. We can't wait to hear from you.